I almost still can't believe that Final Fantasy VII Remake exists, but it absolutely does, on PlayStation 5 no less. But here we are with the port, and some Yuffie DLC for good measure. To be clear, the Yuffie DLC starts you off at level 25, with a kitted out ninja with attitude. The game warns you that there's no explanations for the vast majority of the base remake concepts, and the story is very much assuming you've already played the main campaign. The good news is that it's also completely separate, so you don't need to have a clear save file, or anything wacky. It's especially useful if you've had transfer problems for whatever reason. You can just jump in. The shining star of the DLC is Yuffie herself on multiple levels.
The rare wound, a single white rose of Wutai, the one and only Yuffie!
She's fun to play, as she sports a 4-point shuriken weapon that can engage in close and ranged combat on a whim. While melee mashing is on the table, you can also toss your weapon at an enemy and then trigger ninjutsu magic, which can be modified into any element you want. It's the finishing touch on an already fantastic kit. And she has a lot of personality roaming around the map, chucking her star at boxes and puzzle solutions. I hope that if she becomes a full-on party member in the next part, she retains a lot of what she has going on here. Seeing her stumble as she walks sometimes is lovely too. They put a lot of effort into making her a real character. Yuffie is joined by her partner Sonon very shortly into the story, who operates off a mostly automatic AI system. It works namely because you can choose to trigger abilities at any point using a menu, and synergize with him to basically get him to do what you're doing. The synergy mechanic is not only flashy, both in terms of the UI and in-game impact, but it's fun too. Some abilities can be morphed into powerful team-up abilities, and I was reminded of shades of Chrono Trigger's similar concept on a base level. Yuffie and Sonon work well together, and I think Square Enix found a decent middle ground between full-on gambits and lack of AI control here. But it needs to be said, this thing is super short and very familiar, and therein lies the main sin of the DLC. It does feel like too much of a side story at times. While I appreciate the different perspective, the Lion King 1.5 treatment if you will, we're retreading in familiar areas in the slums and Shinra headquarters here, exact locations in several cases. Now I wouldn't classify it as recycling outright like many DLC scenarios of the past few generations, but it would have been nice to see more of Midgar. The bonus is that we get to see it in a new light with Yuffie, which elevates it far above what could have been throwaway DLC. While the journey is a blast, shore up your narrative expectations. This is a side story. Other than the ending, nothing in this Yuffie DLC is going to get people riled up. This Gaiden actually does play out similarly to the base game, just shrunk down to size. The whole shebang, including both episodes, is around 4 hours with some exploration, and a few more hours if you do absolutely everything. After the separate file is completed, you can redo it again on hard mode, just like the base game. There's also combat simulator challenges to mess around with and the Fort Condor minigame, basically sending certain rock paper scissors minions into battle. Similar to Triple Triad, you can challenge NPCs to unlock new game pieces, which is neat for a time. I really just wish it supported multiplayer because AI battles in certain areas can only go so far. As far as Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade INTERmission goes on a whole, I'm really glad it exists. Yuffie is a character worth exploring on her own, as the enhanced focus on the Wutai and Shinra conflict in the remake needed fleshing out. To be frank, I wouldn't mind seeing another one of these, say for Vincent at some point. But for more written reviews, video game news, and more, be sure to head on over to Destructoid.com. And as always, thank you for watching.